Hey, Eva Humphries here. I'm a BANT Registered Nutritionist and I've teamed up with Good Hemp for a series of educational videos. This one takes a look at how hemp seeds and products may enhance a plant-based diet. Let's take a closer look. First up, protein. Under the current guidelines, the recommended daily intake of protein varies between 45 grams per day for women to 55 grams per day for men. This vaguely equates to 0.75 grams per kilogram of body weight per day, which is a lot of math. As a nutritionist, I do feel these guidelines are somewhat conservative, and I actually tend to advise the majority of my clients to consume at least 20 grams of protein per meal spread across 3 meals per day, at least 3 meals per day. Now, to get this on a plant-based diet, you are looking at vaguely a tin of chickpeas per meal, which translates to around 16 to 17 grams of protein, meaning portion sizes need to be somewhat larger. The other thing we need to contend with is that the digestibility and absorption rate of protein from plant-based sources is somewhat lower. So it makes sense to bump up your total protein intake per day. A further aspect is activity levels. Those government guidelines work on the basis of low levels of activity. If you tend to do a bit more exercise, that protein intake needs to increase even further. This is actually where hemp protein comes in really useful. Around a tablespoon of hemp protein can really bump up the protein content of any meal. And the good thing about it is that it can be integrated both into savory and sweet meals. There is nothing stopping you from stirring through a tablespoon of protein powder into a dish like curries or stews or soups. It will increase the protein in a really easy way. Another aspect that is worth your consideration is complete proteins. If you've been on a plant-based diet for some time, I am sure you are more than familiar with this topic, but let me just recap anyway. We need 20 amino acids to be able to make protein. So these are usable proteins that we can use to make structures in the body or repair damaged tissue. 8 of those amino acids are essential, meaning we need to eat foods that contain them. Otherwise, we can't really make protein for the body. Lysine and methionine, which are 2 of those amino acids that are essential, are really low in plants. If we don't get enough of lysine and methionine in a particular food that we're eating, we tend to not be able to use as much of the protein from that food that we like to. So if your particular food says it may contain 15 grams of protein, if it's lacking in lysine and methionine, the likelihood is that we can only use a small percentage of that protein. A really great thing to do here is to combine 2 foods to ensure that we get all of the essential amino acids into that food. And the good thing about hemp seeds is that they contain a really nice dose of both lysine and methionine. If you throw a handful of hemp seeds on top of your food, you can then create complete proteins and use a great deal more than you would have been able to previously. Plus, 100 grams of hemp seeds contains 31 grams of protein in total. So another little bonus. Another reason it's a good idea to add more protein to your meals is because it increases satiety. The study on the left-hand side showed that protein, out of all the macronutrients, is the most satiating. It will literally keep you fuller for longer than carbohydrates or fats will, or at least that is what the studies are saying. The study on the right-hand side looked at hemp and buckwheat in comparison to meat protein and its levels on satiety. The good news is they found both hemp and buckwheat added to a meal can increase that sensation of feeling fuller for longer and improve levels of satiety. This is really good news, but the good news doesn't actually stop there. If we look at the details of the study, they also made 2 really neat findings. Both involve a lot of science, so let me just simplify them for you. One is that they found hemp seeds added to a meal reduce circulating levels of the hunger hormone post-meal. This might sound like nothing, but actually it's a real biggie. If there is a lot of hunger hormone hanging around after you've eaten, the likelihood is that you'll feel peckish, you feel like the meal that you've just eaten hasn't quite filled you, and you might want to reach for a snack or extra food. When hemp seed was added to the meal, it reduced hunger hormone levels, meaning it is more likely to keep you fuller for longer. A second cool finding was in relation to GLP-1, which stands for glucagon-like peptide 1. Big word, but glucagon-like peptide 1 levels reduced after hemp seeds were added to a meal. What does this mean exactly? Well, GLP levels are high in obesity and also in insulin resistance. So we know that it's not really associated with great health outcomes. By adding hemp seeds to the meal, the GLP-1 levels reduced, and that's actually really beneficial. Moving on to the sustainability side of things, this can be a bit of an issue when it comes to protein, but not with hemp seeds. I've actually taken this screenshot from the Good Hemp website. So if the sustainability side interests you, please do head over to the website because there's tons more information. In a nutshell, and to really summarize, hemp plants are amazing at capturing CO2. In fact, they are better at it than trees. Every bit of the plant can be used, so they are very low on waste. There is also no pesticides needed because hemp plants are very robust. Plus, they fix nitrogen into the soil and wildlife love them. Another aspect that's worth your consideration is essential fats. And by this, I don't mean bog standard fats, because as we know, we can turn almost anything into fats. But a little bit like with the amino acids, where there are 8 essential ones that we need to obtain from our diet, there are essential fats that we must obtain from our diet because we physically cannot make them. These fats are omega-3 and omega-6 fats, and we need them for correct brain function, we need it for nerves, we need it for our eyes, and also for the immune system. It's fairly easy to obtain both omega-3 and omega-6 fats from a plant-based diet, but what isn't easy is to obtain them in the right ratio. The study on the bottom left-hand side, taken from the Journal of Nutrients, basically stated that if the intake of omega-6s are really high, it is almost impossible to utilize all of the omega-3s. So if we really look at a plant-based diet, there are plenty of omega-6s going in from things like oils, from nuts, from various different seeds, and much lower intakes of omega-3s, which can become problematic if the ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 fats becomes completely out of whack. The good thing with hemp seeds and also hemp oil is that the ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 is more like 3:1, which is actually the most ideal ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 fats that you want. This means that omega-3 fats may be much easier to convert. On the other end of the spectrum, olive oil is more like 12:1 on a ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 fats. So it's worth considering where you are getting more omega-3s from in your diet. Now that we've covered the big hitters of protein and essential fats, I wanted to move on to micronutrients. Micronutrients are vitamins and minerals that we need in smaller quantities in our diet. And first up is the most confusing of them all, zinc. Zinc is slightly confusing because we seemingly cannot agree as to how much of it we need in our diet. Let me just illustrate this for you. On the top left-hand side, we have the recommended daily intakes of zinc from the NHS. They recommend 9.5 milligrams a day for men and 7 milligrams a day for women. Then on the bottom left-hand side, we have data from Asia. And in Asia, it is recommended that you increase your levels of zinc. So they actually revise the amount of zinc that they recommend per day. Their old recommended daily intakes were 12 milligrams a day for men and 10 milligrams a day for women, but they revised this to 17 and 13.2 milligrams respectively. And if we look on the data on the right-hand side, this is from Australia. And in Australia, they did something clever in that they differentiated between a vegetarian and what they called a general diet. They hypothesized that those on a plant-based diet will require more zinc from their diet because zinc from a vegetarian diet is less bioavailable. So if we look at the 19 to 30 age group, the recommended daily intake is 14 milligrams for men and 8 milligrams for women. But on a plant-based diet, this increases to 21 milligrams and 12 milligrams respectively. I feel it's really clever that they differentiated between a plant-based diet because it is actually true. We need to add a little bit more zinc into plant-based diets. So the question would be, why would we even need that much zinc? Why do we need to bother with zinc? Well, zinc is in pretty much all of the body. In fact, not even pretty much. It is incredibly crucial to how our body works. We need it for the immune system. We require it for repair. So this is repairing things like if you fell over and you grazed your knee and we need to build new tissue, zinc is needed for that. We also need it for digestive health. It's actually part of every single enzyme that breaks our food down. We need it to make hormones, especially steroid hormones. We need it for healthy aging. And we also need it for taste and smell and appetite. One of the first signs of low zinc levels is literally low taste, low smell, and lack of appetite. Okay, so we know that we need zinc. How much zinc we need is a little bit confusing. A better way to look at it would be to look at where we can get zinc from and how much of that food we actually really need to eat. So I've taken a table on the left-hand side from Australia again, and they're listed the top plant-based sources of zinc-containing foods are sun-dried tomatoes, zinc fortified breakfast cereals, pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, sesame seeds. I have put two big question marks next to sun-dried tomatoes because when I double check this data, it appears that sun-dried tomatoes really vary in zinc content, and the vast majority of them only really contain around 1 to 2 milligrams per 100 grams, and not the 13 milligrams that they have listed. They have also missed out hemp seeds, which fills me with sadness because if hemp seeds were to be included on this table, they would be sitting right on the top. Per 100 grams, hemp seeds contain 9.9 milligrams of zinc. This is also usable zinc. One of the reasons why zinc can't really be absorbed from a plant-based diet so well is because of the presence of phytic acid in most zinc-containing foods. So if we take things like most nuts, so almonds or cashews or Brazil nuts or pecans, they contain phytic acid, which is an anti-nutrient that stops us from absorbing zinc so efficiently. Hemp seeds do not contain phytic acid, so we can use the zinc within them much more efficiently than we would from other foods. On to iron, which is slightly less confusing than zinc, but some variations still really exist. On the left-hand side, I have the NHS data, which suggests that men and women over 50 should consume 8.7 milligrams of iron per day, and women under 50 need about 14.8 milligrams of iron. I've also taken a table from the Australian data because, as we established, they differentiate between plant-based and other diets. So according to the Australian data, women may need up to 18 milligrams a day per iron. What I really enjoyed about reading these guidelines, however, is the fact that they pointed to those on a vegetarian or plant-based diet requiring 80% higher intakes of iron on average. This again comes down to the bioavailability of iron from plant-based foods, i.e. how much of the iron we can physically use from those plant-based sources. On this slide, I wanted to focus on a little bit of extra intel as to why we even need to bother with iron. So on the left-hand side, I've taken a screenshot from a research paper which actually provides a really nice summary of where iron is used in the body. We need it for things like red blood cells, for neurons, for cells of the immune system, and also for muscle. Conversely, if we are low on iron, this may lead to impaired cognitive function. We may experience low mood. We may experience fatigue and weakness, low immunity, because as we can see, we need iron for the majority of immune cells. Our skin and joints may be affected. We need iron to form collagen, which is a big structural protein that keeps us healthy. In infants, low iron levels may lead to delayed development, and in pregnancy, it may lead to adverse outcomes. In summary, it is absolutely essential for us to pay attention to our iron levels. So I wanted to illustrate where we can get iron from and how much of it we actually need to eat to get the right quantity. On the left-hand side is a table from the Australian database again, which illustrates some of the foods highest in iron. Some of these might surprise you somewhat. They actually start from the bottom up. So per 100 grams, the highest amount is thyme, which contains 123.6 milligrams. These are all foods that aren't particularly pleasant to eat in such high quantities. So if we look at the other end of the spectrum, things like spinach and tofu only contain 2.7 milligrams of iron per 100 grams. Hemp seeds actually come out on top of what I would refer to as edible foods in such large quantities because they contain 8 milligrams of iron per 100 grams. It is worth noting that things like calcium, zinc, phytates and tannins reduce the absorption of iron. In the case of cocoa, for example, cocoa contains tannins which can reduce the amount of iron that you're physically able to absorb from it. For the case of calcium and zinc, at the moment they reckon that it's only supplemental calcium and zinc that impedes your ability to take up so much iron from a specific food, not if a food contains zinc and iron at the same time. And then the good news is that vitamin C can increase the amount of plant-based iron that you can get from food. Last but not least, I wanted to draw your attention to magnesium. Now, plant-based diets are already pretty high in magnesium, but hemp seeds really shine in this area, so I just wanted to draw your attention to it. 100 grams of hemp seeds contain around 700 milligrams of magnesium, which translates to twice the recommended daily intake for women and 1.6 times the recommended daily intake for men. It's a good job really because magnesium is our chill out nutrient. It virtually relaxes blood vessels and helps us relax as well. It's also really good for nerves, muscle, including muscles of the cardiovascular system. So this isn't necessarily just muscle that you use for working out, although it's good in that capacity too. And last but not least, we need magnesium to create healthy bone. Now that I've given you all of this information, let me just recap. Hemp seeds are a great source of magnesium, iron, and zinc. Hemp oil can help to contribute essential fatty acids and may address the omega-3 to 6 balance, and hemp protein can really help to bump up the protein intake within your meals. I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and don't forget to check out the rest of the series.